I guess a lot of this is timing, isn't it? Because by the time an ITO license has come in, all the phase 2 offers, I assume, will have been issued by that point. So will they be able to then switch from whatever they've got now to an ITO?
And I think that's a really important point as well, because I think, if NGET do give HV connections, and other Scottish TOs have also given HV connections, I think it's very important for those projects to have certainty on, do they know that what they're accepting is kind of valid, or is there a risk that they're going to then have to change, mod app and change their connections? And I think especially in the kind of current the way that the queue is set up, actually asking for a change to a different connection voltage might impact your queue position and probably your connection date. So it's probably quite high risk if you don't know you're actually allowed to own those assets.
Welcome to the Connectology podcast. I'm Hugh Taylor, CEO here at Road Taylor, and in these episodes, our grid connection specialists, the connectologists, dive into the evolving grid connections landscape, often taking expert guests with them in order to discover, generate and share insights that might just help you and maybe even industry as a whole to connect projects faster, at lower risk and at lower cost.
Hello and welcome to another Connectology podcast from Road Taylor. I'm Pete Aston and I'm joined by my colleagues Nikki, Pillinger and Alex, Ikonic. And welcome everyone, nice to have you along. This is the second of 2 updates we're giving on various subjects. This one is on demand reform and various code mods. And the one before was on sort of just a general connections reform update. So make sure you go and listen to that one as well. But we're going to dig in to start with in relation to demand reforms. So demand reform, I guess, has been going since about sort of October, November last year, when sort of Ofgem, NISO first started really talking about demand reform due to the huge queue of demand projects, mostly from data centres. So there's been various different bits that have happened, various sort of documents produced and so on. But the most recent one, Alex, is one you've been involved with, which is to do with the sort of Connect pillar. So Ofgem has recently produced a document that's sort of given a couple of weeks ago, that's given an update on their Connect pillar. And the Connect pillar came out of one of their previous documents a bit earlier this year, where there was CURATE, Plan and Connect, I think, in terms of how they're going to push forward demand reform. So do you want to just talk us through this document that they've sort of published recently and what it's all about?
Yeah, so this is basically a summary of what the Connect Task and Finish group have kind of been doing to date. So that was set up early in the year to kind of dig into the detail of all things kind of Connect related and to kind of think of the kind of next steps. So Ofgem and DESNZ have been leading on that, and the Task and Finish group kind of holds a variety of different developers and network companies, so we sit on that as well. So the kind of key takeaways from that document is there was support for, there's definitely strong industry support for alternative arrangements for HV asset ownership. So the current rules of either getting a transmission license or a transmission license exemption kind of aren't seen as enough, and the support for having either a class exemption and an ITO license route to kind of enable greater ownership of HV assets.
Yeah, and when we talk about HV, we're not talking about 11 kV, we're talking about like transmission level voltage.
Yes, yeah.
Because it's always confusing in these documents when they talk about HV, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
So we're talking transmission level ownership for demand projects, which currently is either not allowed or is a little bit woolly as to whether it is allowed or not.
Definitely a little bit woolly. So we've seen kind of quite different treatment between different TOs and in how they kind of go about such connections. So we know that some TOs kind of will allow offers with HV connections, but they'll have caveats to say, the legal risk is on the developer if they can own or not own those assets. But NGET in particular have said, we're not offering these kind of connections until there is kind of certainty of ownership. Which is actually, there's been a bit of a softening on that position, I would say. So as part of the Connect Task and Finish group, NGET have kind of decided to investigate that in a bit more detail. So they recently launched a call for input. So they were asking demand customers whether they would be interested in owning HV connection assets. And that might be included in some Gate 2 offers.
And they only did that for phase 2, didn't they?
Yes, which makes sense because I think for phase 1, those projects are going to be quite progressed anyway. anyway. So to meet those connection dates, it probably wouldn't make sense to switch the asset ownership now.
Yeah. So what's any particular takeaways from this report? Are they is Ofgem favouring sort of one approach over another, or is everything still being taken forward?
So I think there's still quite a few things that have been taken forward. I think they are definitely prioritising work on the ITO licence. So right now they're seeking feedback from industry about what people think of this, how it would work, and if there are any kind of opportunities or risks in what the ITO licence really kind of should achieve. So that's definitely been kind of prioritised for now, but they acknowledge that it's not sort of one or the other, and there might be some instances where something like a class exemption is much more appropriate. So they very helpfully come up with these project archetypes, so different kind of setups of projects, and they're considering kind of whether one or the other might be better or worse for different kind of project setups.
Okay.
So yeah, they definitely feed into that consultation if you have projects that will be affected by it.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think it's Eclipse, wasn't it, that was that had applied for an ITO license.
Yes.
Quite some years ago now. So it'd be interesting that that's sort of going to maybe come to fruition at some point with an ITO. But it seems to make sense to me that offering should be there, because we had the IDNO option for many years, and why not an ITO?
And it's worked quite well. So
yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. So is there anything for developers to be feeding into now as a result of that? Is there like further consultation on that particular bit?
So there will be a further consultation. So in autumn, at some point in autumn, we expect that Ofgem will publish a consultation that will cover the ITO licence proposals in a bit more detail, and they'll also cover kind of a couple of other things as well. So they're going to consider kind of connection arrangements that exist in the current framework. So kind of alternative connection options, such as like phased connections for demand, or kind of non-firm, so that kind of N-1 scenario, and then there might be kind of additional steps after that. So yeah, one to look out for.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of this is timing, isn't it? Because by the time an ITO license has come in, all the phase 2 offers, I assume, will have been issued by that point. So will they be able to then switch from whatever they've got now to an ITO?
And I think that's a really important point as well, because I think, if NGET do give HV connections, and other Scottish TOs have also given HV connections, I think it's very important for those projects to have certainty on kind of, do they know that what they're accepting is kind of valid, or is there a risk that they're going to then have to change, mod app and change their connections? And I think especially in the kind of current the way that the queue is set up, actually asking for a change to a different connection voltage might impact your queue position and probably your connection date. So it's probably quite a high risk if you don't know you're actually allowed to own those assets. Yeah,
it's really, really big. The other bit on demand reform that's been going on is in relation to the CURATE pillar. So I've been sitting on Ofgem's CURATE advisory group, CURAG, and there's maybe one or two more meetings for that to happen. So we're expecting a consultation to come out from Ofgem, maybe in a month or so, on some of these points. But that's this pillar is really looking at the queue as it is, and potentially how that can sort of be thinned out a little bit. And only have the projects in that are really viable to move forward. So I think the two main things within that have been looked at are a financial mechanism. So there's been sort of 3 options looked at that are sort of just an upfront deposit that's then refundable at the end, or some sort of like a project commitment fee style ramping up of a sort of cancellation liability and securities over the time of the project, and a few others. So it'd be interesting to see what Ofgem actually comes out with in terms of that. And I guess the $1 million question is whether it will have any impact on the data centers particularly. And the other thing they're looking at with that is potentially some new milestones that might specifically impact sort of data centers, potentially something like end customer in place, end user of data center. But that's quite difficult to know at what point a data center developer would actually have such an end user in place. definitely not at the point you apply for a connection, but like probably more than a month before you're going to energise. So, you know, so where in the process do you put that so it's got the most effect for keeping viable projects in the queue? So yeah, lots of conversation around that sort of thing.
Thank you for listening so far. If insights like these are valuable in your work, then feel free to subscribe and stay current as Britain's connections landscape continues to evolve. Now, back to the connectologists.
And would we expect those to still go through the code mod process, or is that something that you think Ofgem might look to kind of, expedite through like PIA powers?
Yeah, I think the conversation is like as much would be expedited as possible through the Planning Infrastructure Act powers. But we'll have to wait and see exactly what they suggest in that consultation, because I guess that will come out in the wash there. We're going to move into code mods now, but the code mod I want to pick up on first is CMP 417, which is the application of the user commitment cancellation securities approach to demand customers. So that's the approach that's currently used for generation projects. So it's going to significantly decrease securities and cancellation liabilities for demand projects. At the same time, the Ofgem are wanting to introduce a fee, sort of financial mechanism to make it harder for data centres to stay in the queue. So there's a
bit of mixed messaging, yeah.
Slight conflict. I think it's the right thing to introduce user commitment securities, because it sort of avoids some of that, over securing issue and puts everyone on the same playing field. But it does mean that the sort of financial mechanism that's introduced for data centres maybe has to be even higher to sort of compensate, because if the net position for data centres is less cancellation liabilities than they have now, then it's not really done anything. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens sort of with that. But the CMP 417 final reports, I think, imminently due to go to Ofgem. So we'd expect a decision from Ofgem on that by the end of the summer probably.
I think it's definitely the right answer. This is something that should have been looked at quite a long time ago for demand, is actually making sure that massive over-securitization wasn't happening. Obviously, we're now sort of seeing, kind of similar issues with the demand queue than we were with the generation queue. But there are other mechanisms with that. And also, like, Ofgem and NISO and DESNES have to get familiar with what the demand queue looks like and that diversity within the demand queue, because, they're not all data centres. There's lots of other massive demand users that are going to be coming online, and they're not generation. They follow a very different process. So it's going to have to be a bit of a steep learning curve for them in terms of appreciating how these projects actually function.
Yeah.
And we are expecting the demand queue to be published sometime this year, aren't we?
Or next year, I think maybe early
next
next
year.
year.
Okay,
so the demand capacity register. Yeah. So I think that's still kind of being worked on, but there is the expectation that it should be in place by early next year. But that's, very positive stuff.
And that'll be a demand capacity register from both NISO and the DNOs?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really going to help with for everyone to gain a picture for what this actually looks like. Okay, moving on to some other code mods. Do you want to talk us through CMP 470, like what it is, and then where we're up to with it?
Yes, so that's something we've covered on some of our earlier podcasts. So for those of you who aren't familiar, it's introducing a project commitment fee. So it's primarily focused on batteries, but in theory would apply to any oversubscribed technology that meets this criteria. And so if the queue is, I think, more than 50% oversubscribed, then there would be this new fee which kind of ramps up depending on how much the oversubscription falls or doesn't fall over the next kind of 6-month period. And so at the maximum, it could be a 25k per megawatt security for these projects. That's
really quite big.
It can be quite hefty. So the code admin consultation is out now, and it's due to be finished by the 30th of June. And so please submit your responses to that if there's time, because it could have quite a big impact on battery projects in the queue or those who are expecting their Gate 2 offers.
So in terms of that timing, that consultation closes 30th of June. So then there'll be a final report pulled together over the next month or to
and sent to Ofgem.
to Ofgem. So when's Ofgem likely to get that final report?
So I think the assumption is that they would do it in summer, maybe by the end of this summer, and then it would be implemented kind of from, it would start kind of trickling through to security statements by next year.
Okay, yeah. Well, that could be a really significant one again. It's like almost everything we do is like, this is really significant. Maybe we need to have levels of significant. Okay, thank you for that one, Alex. Come over to yourself now, Nikki. So there's a couple of sort of a pair of mods that relate to SGT charging, basically. Do you want to just talk us through what they are and where we've got to with them? So I know you're sitting on one of the groups, but not the other.
Yes, so there's CMP 460, which is essentially the kind of transmission level of charging. So that's deciding whether SGTs or transmission assets would actually be charged for, or whether they would be socialised, as they are with all infrastructure GSPs. So it's deciding whether, on a sort of a broad scale, those costs would actually be socialised. That consultation, so we kind of had that, and it's now it's progressing behind the scenes, but I believe that we haven't heard anything about it for a little while. We've got DCP 461, which is kind of the step level down, so kind of distribution charging. So in theory, CMP 460 could kind of solve the issue, or it very well may not. So we've got DCP 461, which kind of sits underneath.
So if CMP 460 said we're going to completely socialise SGT charging, all the work you've done on DCP 461 would be not required because there's nothing then to... Yeah, okay, right.
Pretty much, which for me is fine because I like having backup plans. The fact that, if CMP 460 doesn't do that, then we need something at distribution that is agreed and that is consistent for distribution projects. And at the moment we don't. And I think so I've got the results from the second consultation voting in front of me, and I think this really, it highlights how difficult it is to reach a consensus on this, because we had 9 options, and there's not really anything that clear that's come out.
And some of those options were like combinations of
they
different
are,
options.
So the main
right?
options are kind of option 1 is effectively socialisation, option 2 is CAF, option 3 is do nothing, or option 3 is like have a consistent approach across all the DNOs. But and then there's kind of variations on that sort of socialisation or CAF. So the one that kind of seems the most popular is the 0.2 version of this. So like 1.2 and 2.2 both got 7 votes and 10 votes.
So what would that do for us if we had 1.1 and 1.2 or whatever?
So the kind of 0.2 element of this, like the kind of set option, but with another kind of thing added into it, is where you've got a GSP and it's only for one customer, you would then not have this applicable, and that would be paid for by that customer.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the most common kind of additional answer. So, yeah, like I said,
and that sort
no
of
real
makes
clear
sense to me.
consensus.
Like if you're connecting into an existing GSP and you're relatively small, but there's a SGT triggered, you pay a CAF for it. If you're 240 megawatts and you need your own dedicated supergrid transformer, well, I suppose even if you paid a CAF on that, it's still
100%. So it's whether it's the kind of point that you wouldn't socialise. It's just for one customer.
Makes sense.
But yeah, so the voting across this, there's 1.2 got 7, and then 2.2 got 10, but then 2.1 got 7, and there's no consensus really, to be honest. So this kind of has to go to Ofgem for them to decide what is palatable for them.
Yeah.
Personally, like I said, it may be fixed by socialising everything. Obviously, we've got infrastructure sites, which is a little bit of a challenge because you do have the GSPs that will be socialised. But in terms of like customer interest, which is what Ofgem should have at the forefront of their thinking, having a CAF would potentially be the most palatable option for them. And even though, it's still going to be a significant amounts of money for developers, it does at the very least provide consistency across all the DNOs about how those transmission assets are charged for.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe again towards the end of the summer we might get.
Yeah,
more of a steer from
I'm not
Ofgem on
sure on this. Like I said, we've had 2 consultations. The work group meetings are starting again next week. It would have been really nice to get this done like a year ago, so that we actually kind of had it before Gate 2 happened, but it hasn't happened. So yeah, I'm not sure when either of those are going to be concluded.
Okay, watch this space.
Yeah, that might actually affect kind of whether people are able to accept their Gate 2 offers or not as well. So.
Yes, this is another one for me, is that we've still got this uncertainty hanging over projects, and it's still not a final answer for people, because you could still get a Gate 2 offer, it could still have SGT asset contributions in it. But you're like, oh, okay, so, this actually still might change in the future. So I'll accept this Gate 2 and I'll carry on with it. And it's like the technical limits thing, offers are going to come out and, we'll put in an EOI for technical limits. So we'll accept this and we'll see if that works out. So it's still not a final answer for developers, this. There's still things that are a bit up in the air.
Yeah. Just a couple more to go through, and we've got to do it quickly because Abby, who's filming this, wants to get out of this room because it's stinking hot because we're in a heat wave. So there's one more that you wanted to go through, Nikki, DCP 475. This is a new one.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. It's one that I sort of saw flag up the other day. The general concept behind it is that distribution customers get compensated for like faults and outages and curtailment events in the same way that transmission customers do, which is, in a way, it's a perfectly reasonable ask, but they're quite lacking on detail at the moment. I can't find that much about it, but it would presumably then mean retrospectively applying kind of compensation to all distribution connected customers, despite them signing up for a single circuit non-firm connection. So yeah, we'll have to kind of see where that goes, trying to find a little bit more information about it at the moment. But could be interesting.
That'd be very interesting. And the very last one we just wanted to touch on, CMP 447, which is the removal of designated strategic works from cancellation charges. So I guess the overall impact of this will be reducing cancellation charges so that projects that are strategic are just going to be happening anyway in the background and won't get put into customers' sort of statements, cancellation charge statements. This was actually agreed to back in January, I think, and we we understand that Ofgem is pulling together a list of sort of accepted works that are not going to be then included in cancellation charges, but we don't think that this has yet been approved. So yeah. Wait and see. We'll give more of an update on that once we have it. But at this stage, we don't.
So it is, but we do expect them to publish it at some point.
Yes, okay. that is expected at some point, but not quite sure when or what it will include.
And do we know if that will be done kind of in time for Gate 2 offers or some Gate 2 offers? No?
No idea.
Wait and see.
Wait and see. And there was one other very last one. This is the last one. CMP 471, which was a mod that was put in to do interim contract variation process ahead of the new window. So allowing customers to put some sort of mod app in prior to the new transmission application windows to do some sort of, I guess, small changes to schemes. It's possible that this is going to be superseded by NESO's just recently announced mod app scoping exercise, but we're not quite sure if this is going to...
They definitely interact in some way, because I think they'll... it depends whether NESO can run a sort of mini mod app window or whether they can sort of incorporate those changes into the Gate 2 process, because I suppose if they can't, then this mod is still needed. But yeah, it's definitely one to kind of watch out for.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's it for now. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we will be back, no doubt, fairly shortly with another update because everything changes so quickly. But for now, goodbye.
Thanks for joining the connectologists in this exploration. This knowledge sharing is made possible by the support of our clients. We thank them and hope it will help the whole of industry to connect society's critical infrastructure faster. If you found this useful, you're welcome to explore more free insights at roadnighttaylor.co.uk/connectology or click on the Insights tab at the top of our homepage.